Tua enter to our ancestors. Tua. Welcome, beloved, to the Sankofa Ancestor Shrine. I'm your host, Sacred Woman Practitioner Tatami, and I want to warn you from the jump that this is not the most stable live stream. My husband is gaming over here. My kids are watching their first movie of the day over here, kind of late at night. But they're pretty prone to coming and telling me about what they see in movies. And so there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee for how this will turn out, but I'm determined to keep going with the Sacred Sister Circle. So here we are. I hear him yelling with his friends over here. I hear my kids yelling whatever they think over here. And I'm just here trying to basically facilitate continuing on a spiritual journey despite having, family who's doing their own things. So let me continue, first of all, with a prayer. Let's start with a prayer, beloved. Ancestors, Mother Earth, listen as we speak, because we have so much to reach out to right now. We remember in gratitude you, our great mother, who sustains us and gives us all that we need. Those of us who live on this planet. Ashe. We remember in gratitude the sun high above, which gives us daylight and helps the plants grow. We give thanks to the moon and stars, which are bright when the sun is gone, the moon moving, the seas below. We remember with gratitude the winds and sky, which bring new seeds and change, and we are thankful for the clouds, the rains, the rivers, the streams, the oceans, the natural cycles, which give us water. Returned thanks to the plants, which heal us and sustain us, house us, and teach us. And we return thanks to you, Mama Earth. We renew our promise to protect you, to continue to be students who learn of your ways and continue on our life's journey, centering Mama Earth. Ashe. Oh my goodness. All this shouting I hear, I'm not sure how much of it is picked up by the microphone, but it's just a microcosm of trying to be a sacred woman while you have all of these marriage, children, a household, trauma from before, work, whatever you have, there's always something. There's always something in the background, is there not? So at any rate, the prayer I read was just from the Earth and the Ancestors. You can get the free PDF at ritualready.com. You can also get the paperback at Barnes & Noble Press, Amazon, etc. Excuse me, I'm in my kids' bedroom. Literally. I put them out. I came and claimed a corner of their room in between my husband, who has claimed our bedroom, and my kids, who have claimed the living room. I've tried to claim my own space, and I think I claimed enough of one. So today I wanted to read just the beginning of Planetwalker because it inspires me. I love the first few pages of Planetwalker really inspire me because I knew about Wangari in her planting of trees in Africa, but in my heart, I knew there were more. Black people just don't find themselves all across the diaspora, and they're not activists, environmentalists, for civil rights, for Mama Earth, for the ancestors, whatever it is. You don't generally find Black people around the world, and we're not trying to work for something. So I looked up Black environmentalists, and bumped into this book, into Dr. John Francis, and learned about his journey, silencing himself, listening, becoming a doctor while silent. It inspired me. That's part of why I have this. And his first page is so inspiring. He says, I'm only going to read about three paragraphs of this. He starts with a quote. Thomas Merton, 1964. The geographical pilgrimage is the symbolic acting out of an inner journey. The inner journey is the interpolation of the meaning and signs of the outer pilgrimage. One can have one without the other, but it's best to have both. Okay, I'm going to get into this, but let me just continue with this book. He goes on to have his first paragraph. January 17th, 1971, I witnessed a crude oil spill of nearly 500,000 gallons in the waters near the Golden Gate Bridge. The oil spill was my first experience with a major environmental insult. As I drove my car over the Golden Gate, I felt some responsibility for the mess washing up onto the shore. It was nearly a year afterwards, still feeling the responsibility, that I gave up the use of motorized vehicles and started walking. Okay, so the first time I read this excerpt, I was blown away because I was a pedestrian. I was a choosing pedestrian. My husband can drive. I've mostly chosen to walk to work since I've started going anywhere at any time. But what really impressed me was that he could pinpoint, even though he didn't make any action right then. I think a lot of us can take this in as inspiration, because many of us can pinpoint a time or multiple times where we were just inspired, like, whoa, this isn't right. Somebody's got to act different here. But sometimes it takes some time, right, to decide that we need to act. I think that this is such a wonderful inspiration. It took him a year. He drove over the bay. He continued driving for months after seeing what he saw. But it stuck with him, and he wouldn't dismiss it as a human, as an activist. It's interesting to try to pinpoint our own beginning for our own path and progress. What started it? Even if you didn't start right then, it can still be an amazing, inspiring point. It took him a year. He saw a spill in the bay, which I've been seeing spills in the bay since I was a kid, and they've really scared, upset, angered, grossed out. I mean, just a plethora of feelings. To see somebody who ended up making he made such a big stink. He ended up getting his doctorate while silent. It shows us that there are paths for us. And I want us to be inspired so much by somebody who saw something and eventually worked towards it. But let me read you his his second paragraph. I'm only reading a small bit to start. He said, my community took note. To end the almost constant bickering and arguments with my friends as to the question of whether one person walking could make a difference, I stopped speaking and spent a day in silence. My life altered. As that day of silence stretched out before me, I realized I had begun a pilgrimage. an outer and inner journey, walking, sailing around the world as part of my education, dedicated to raise environmental consciousness and promote Earth stewardship and world peace. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read from Planetwalker today, because I want you and I to not be caught up in Dr. John's beginning, because we're going to talk a lot about him this year. I want us to concentrate on what we can determine as a catalyst for ourselves. Was it abuse? Was it seeing or reading about an ancestor or elder who put in the work? Was it reading a fictional character who inspired us? Was it seeing the youth who will come up after us? There's often a catalyst, and I don't think we should undermine what really pushes us into the work. But I do think that we should absolutely understand that there's inspiration, that there's understanding of what will come next. And I was just so impressed when I read this passage from John when I was first looking for Black, Indigenous, underclass generally, people who were trying to reclaim the land and reclaim some sense of self when it came to representation. So we do have chapter 3 of The Spirit of the Womb is what it's called here in Sacred Woman. And Queen talks about how we've been so asleep and so disconnected from who we are and what our body is telling us. For this week, one of the things that I really want us to address is I want us to have a recorded in some way conversation with our womb, with our catalyst, with maybe it was trauma that made it happen, maybe we're just getting to that point of adulthood where we think we should address things. Maybe it was things that we didn't think were a big deal then, but we think it is now. Maybe we thought it was a big deal then and we don't as much now, and we want to work through that. That's what I also want us to go through this week. What is the voice of our womb telling us? She talks about that on page 44. She also talks about writing it down. And I don't want us to feel like it has to just be Dear Diary, Dear Ancestors even. It can be drawings, quilting, crochet, painting, writing, obviously. It can be many things. Queen asks us on page 46, she references Langston Hughes when he talks about a dream deferred. He says, does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And Queen talks about how that references in many ways the unhealed womb. And I do think that's important as we start to recognize if we have rotting in our system. I hate YouTube ads because sometimes it will show just gross things. For example, a few weeks ago, I had a YouTube ad that it was about like, oh, he says it's a sore, but really it's an infected abscess. I was like, oh my goodness, that's not real. That's just so gross. But it does actually serve as symbolism for what a lot of us go through, which is we will underestimate what we're experiencing. So as we go through things, I do want us to actually address, is this something so old and so rotten that it's literally a disease that needs to be cut off or addressed at a serious level? Talk to your womb. Rub hands and lay hands on your womb. And let's have that conversation. I don't mind if it's written in dialogue, script, etc. Maybe it's a drawing, maybe it's a song, maybe it's something else. But I do want us to take time to address our wombs and address what we're going through. I'm going to make another video on actual journal questions for the womb. But before I do that, I do hope that everybody, including myself, I'm going to absolutely do this, just spend time in silence, lay hands, and converse. Before we start deciding this needs to happen, that needs to happen, that didn't happen, this, whatever. Let's lay hands on the womb. All right, I'm going to make another video ASAP just so that we can continue on with this. But I do think that this part of the Sacred Woman journey is important. Really addressing ourselves without letting other thoughts come in and, taint or, sway our opinion on ourselves and on our own journey. Because people will be out there making their opinions on people's journey, but they've never experienced anything like it. They're not in that position. They're at a different place. So what they're saying makes sense for where they are. I want us to each be able to intuitively use divination and intuition to find our spot. So please, beloved, we're only on page not even 50 yet. Find who you are, where you are, and start making honest conversation with your womb. All right, I will talk to you in the next few days. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.